Hi, everybody. Welcome to our second Wallet Standards Working Group call. My name is Ori, and I'm a technical program manager from Pagoda. And I'm super excited to kick off this group yet again and to discuss another Wallet Standards proposal today. So just to go over the agenda, first, I will give a quick overview and some updates on developer governance. Next, we'll do some brief introductions as we have a few panelists joining us today. Then we'll get into the main discussion at 4:13 and hear from the author, Philip, who proposed it. And then we will open up the Q&A and talk about next steps and how to get involved in developer governance. All right. So just a quick update on developer governance. So over the last few months, we've been engaging with the community over this initiative, which is really about bringing people and organizations together to help build a decentralized developer ecosystem and empowering anyone to contribute from idea to code. And we've been bucketing most of the developer community activities into 4 areas. So ideation, implementation, review, and support. And I just wanted to quickly highlight them to help contextualize our meeting for today. So starting with ideation, this is about sharing and exploring ideas with other people in the ecosystem. So anyone can submit an idea, like improving the protocol or standards. And it's important to have a place for people to freely express and themselves and explore ideas in a welcoming and permissionless way. And one way to do that is in the developer governance gigs board. And this is a new platform on Near Social for anyone to share their ideas, to get feedback and support from the community. And it's still in the early days, but there's already a lot of activity on there, and anyone who's interested can start posting their idea today. Now, maybe you have an early seed for an idea or a topic that you want to explore with others. So another great way to get involved is to join a community group. And community group is a group of very passionate, self-organized people who are interested in a specific topic, such as zero knowledge, wallet standards, etc. And they offer a great opportunity for people to come together and just discuss ideas and concerns and things they want to help improve. And many of these groups have already formed and have dedicated communication channels like Telegram, as well as regular meetings. And you're welcome to join any of those groups or to start one yourself. You can find them on the Developer Governance website. And we're also going to be publishing a blog post probably this week that will highlight some recent learnings and insights from a lot of these groups. So what happened if you already have submitted an idea and now you want to turn it into code? This is where implementation comes in. You can also use the DevGov gigs board to submit implementation solutions to your ideas. Or even if you have an alternative solution in mind for somebody else's idea, you can propose that as well. And this is just a great way to gauge community interest and support and to get a variety of perspectives, which really can help strengthen our collective problem solving and innovation. Now, if you have an idea that you want to get integrated across the ecosystem, like a new contract standards or protocol improvement, or if you are seeking funding support, you will need to get a more official validation from a recognized group of experts. And you can do that by submitting a NEP, a near enhancement proposal. And this is a rigorous process that is similar to other prominent open source projects like Rust. And it enables anyone to submit their proposals for review. And this is actually what we're talking about today on a call, as a NEP that was submitted. So what happens once you submit a NEP and how does it move forward? So this is where the review comes in, which involves working groups like the Wallet Standards Working Group that we have here today. And basically, a working group is a selected committee of subject matter experts that help review proposals in a thoroughly and timely manner and oversee decisions. And there are multiple working groups, each one focusing on a different ecosystem need. We've already kicked off 4 of them to help bootstrap this process. And we've been iterating on it for the last few months to kind of understand what works and what doesn't. And we hope to introduce more groups in the future and empower more people in the community to run them. So before we get into the actual call today, I just wanted to highlight the roles that are involved in the NEP process, as well as the stages. So on the roles front, we have the author. This is the person who writes the proposal and presents it to the working group. There can also be a champion who takes that over in case the original author is unable to continue. There's the moderator, the person who facilitates the process and helps validates that the proposal meets the guidelines and progresses forward. There's the reviewer, the subject matter expert, the person who reviews the technical feasibility of the proposal, and then the approver. This is the working group member who helped make the final decision. And in terms of the actual illustration of this process, there are 3 stages: draft, review, and voting, and 2 outcomes: approved and rejected. And all of those roles help move the NEPs through these stages and towards the outcomes. And most of this happens asynchronously on GitHub, on the NEP itself. But when we do get to the voting stage, each working group has a public meeting like the one we're having today to discuss the NEP with the author and to formalize the decision. And this is what I meant to show when I was talking about that. We're here to vote and make a decision. All right, so lastly, I just wanted to highlight what happens when a NEP actually gets approved and how can the implementer seek funding. And that leads us to the last area, which is support. So once the working group completes their technical due diligence and approves their proposal, they can use the developer governance gigs board to post an official attestation. And this tells any potential sponsors that there was a formal review done by recognized experts in the ecosystem and that any organizations or individuals can choose to sponsor that project. So that was a very quick overview of the latest parts of developer governance. And as I mentioned, there are more blog posts coming that will help kind of go into further detail. And you can already check one that explains it on the developer governance website. And with that, I am super excited to jump into the wallet standards call today. And I'd like to do some introductions and start with the working group members. And I'll hand it over first to Cameron Dennis.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Cameron Dennis here. I am the CEO of the Banyan Collective. It's a ecosystem management organization dedicating to scaling NEAR in the United States. But simultaneously, I am still working at the NEAR Foundation, where I've been working here for the last 2 years, primarily on filling a lot of the core infrastructure gaps in the ecosystem, whether that be on-ramps, custodians, oracles, indexers, whatever people need to actually build on NEAR. I was working on mainly on bringing new partners in, and now I'm more focused on the social layer. So as Ori has eloquently described, making sure that there are clear paths for devs to get engaged. So now it's about meetups and hackathons and standards and dinners and builder days and everything in between. So super excited to be here, and personally very passionate about management, zero knowledge, DAOs, and I like DeFi a lot too. So a little bit of everywhere, but yeah, very, very interested in key management and onboarding billions of people to Web3. Daryl, you want to go next?
Absolutely. So I'm Daryl Collins. I work over at Pagoda as well. I was responsible for the NEAR wallet code base for a while after being hired. And I'm currently working on the onboarding team. We're trying to solve the issue of onboarding people with zero friction or as close to zero friction as possible. I love JavaScript, everything JavaScript. I'm kind of one of those strange people who actually enjoys the pointy edges of the language. So I'm involved in everything JavaScript across the ecosystem here at Pagoda as well.
Hi guys, Osman from Pagoda as well. Currently working on tools at Pagoda. Before this, I was working on NEAR API.js, and before that, I was working on the wallet. So yeah, like a lot of clients, a lot of standards, a lot of APIs and stuff like that that deal with the NEAR protocol. So nice to meet you guys.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here and for all the work that went into reviewing the NEP and helping kind of iterate on this process. All right, so next I would like to introduce the moderators that are here, which is Vlad and myself. So Vlad, hello.
Hey everybody, yeah, Vlad is here. You also can see my handle a lot under Frol nickname on GitHub and on Stack Overflow. I joined NEAR quite early on, one of the first engineers at the team, and since the time I've been involved in all the engineering tasks, and lately I got involved with this more formal and scaling infrastructure, like ecosystem task, which is the developer governance and NAP specifically. So doing all this work to help us going and scale as much as possible. And Ori.
Awesome. Back to me. Yeah, so I am playing a moderator role in this process, and yeah, being super excited to just start seeing momentum, of the working groups and the NEPs and the community groups, and there's more to come. So I'm looking forward to it. All right, so now I would love to introduce the author for the NEP that we are discussing today, which is NEP 413. So hello, Philip. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Philip. I've been at NEAR for, I think, going to a year and 2 months now. Started working originally on the wallet code base. Did some work on the JS SDK launch, and currently working with the tooling team. So yeah, it's great to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for submitting the NEP, and excited to get to it. And I also wanted to just highlight that if at any moment during the preceding discussion, if you have questions or feedback, feel free to drop them in the Q&A button on the screen. You can also add your comments in the chat box. Just make sure to select everyone, because sometimes it defaults to just the panelists. And you can also raise your hand if you want to speak. With that, I am super excited to get into the NEP discussion. And we first will have the author, Philip, kind of present a summary of the NEP, and then from there we'll have the working group kind of discuss their findings, and ultimately we'll get to the actual decision. So with that, Philip, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your NEP, why you believe it's important, etc.?
Sure. So this NEP is basically proposing like a standard for signing messages using a NEAR account for a specific receiver. So this actually came up from like a request to enable like a means of authentication for accounts where that does not like result in incurring any gas fees or having to be on-chain. So this NEP basically proposes that we add like a sign message interface to the wallet API that would allow the apps sign specific messages for their like context. Yeah, there are a lot of things. Would I need to run through like some of the things in the actual document, or is that something we've gone through? And
so we're going to have Daryl give a summary of some of the benefits and concerns that were raised. So if there's anything else at a high level that you want to highlight, feel free to, but otherwise we can proceed once you feel like we're good.
Yeah, I think at a high level, that's exactly what it does. And so like in doing it, we had to like make sure to factor in like all the security risks that could be introduced by like making sure like there's no opportunity for malicious actors to perhaps make people sign things that look like just a message but are valid transactions. Also reduce the possibility of a replay attack where dApps could potentially delay the signing of the message and potentially use that to do things on people's accounts subsequently, or perhaps submit this for the activity on the account subsequently to the blockchain. So yeah, I mean, Daryl will dive into more detail, but at a summary, those are some of the things we thought about when coming up with this.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for that summary, and again for submitting this NEP. Next, I'd love to get into the actual overview from Daryl on the benefits and the concerns that we saw. And just for context, for anyone who might be new to this call and this format, everyone has spent time, like including the community, going through the NEP, discussing it on GitHub. And so what we're doing here is we're summarizing all of that activity that has happened asynchronously. And you can definitely follow along as well on the NEP itself, which is linked to the invite. So with that, Daryl, hello.
Good stuff. So benefits for this one are pretty huge, actually, from the ecosystem perspective. One of the biggest things that people have had a issue with on our current signing in process for logging into a DApp is the fact that there's always a side effect. There's an on-chain side effect to logging in. And one of the biggest benefits that we get from this approach is that there is no on-chain transaction executed. So you can authenticate somebody without adding an access key to their account. And this means that you don't have to pay for storage for an access key. This is a huge benefit for folks who have very little near in their account and they're not looking to lock up additional near holding an access key. And in some cases, actually, DApps have been written that don't actually need a limited access key. A really obvious case for this is some DeFi apps. Every time you need to do something, you actually need to sign it with a full access key to transfer some wealth around, right? You have some value. And having somebody add a limited access key for a smart contract that you can't even call without having a full access key is just confusing to the user. People have it's kind of a dark pattern on the user side of things because you end up with an approval for a sign-in where it tells people that they can call a method on a smart contract that might not even exist. And it means that there is an overhead on signing in that requires that somebody has near available on their accounts that is burned in gas, and also some amount that is then staked onto this chain to store this limited access key. And if the user then deletes the limited access key later, it's confusing to the user as to whether or not that will impact their usage of the app. If I remove that limited access key, will I no longer be able to use that DeFi app? Well, actually, no, you'll be fine because every transaction goes through a full access key anyway. So it eliminates a lot of dark patterns in the onboarding experience for somebody who's signing in, and it makes it so that there won't be unnecessary gas burned on chain in order to authenticate that somebody owns a given near account. And it also is kind of convenient that it would apply for an implicit ID that you may not actually have even created on chain. This can be used to verify that you own any full access key for an account, regardless as to whether or not it exists. This is also a really nice thing because it allows us to implement authentication using JWT or a WebAuthn type of challenge signing response. So you don't actually have to use a transaction like an oracle that is the chain in order to verify something. You get a signed message, you verify that it's signed with the key that it says that it was, and you can treat that as an authenticated login for an app that actually doesn't use the chain yet. It's very useful for a progressive onboarding where somebody may actually have access to an app as an identity, but until they actually deposit some near and want to interact with it in a privileged way, they don't need to worry about what that means for an on-chain account, depositing funds, etc. And it also removes any kind of block delays. Now, this is kind of a funny one because block times on near are incredibly low. Transaction execution does not take a long time, but it does mean that signing in doesn't involve waiting for finality on a transaction on the chain. It makes error handling simpler. You don't have to worry about, oh, this transaction failed for some reason. Let's say you couldn't access RPC. This doesn't require RPC actually. So there is no dependency on external network requests. There doesn't have to be a access key added to the account. So it eliminates a little bit of a delay there and simplifies the mental model for any engineers who are building on this stuff. If you're building a forum, let's say that you want to authenticate people that they own a near account, but they don't necessarily submit transactions against that near account. You just want to use near for identity. This is a really nice benefit to having this kind of a signing functionality where you can verify that somebody owns the account without having to wait for a transaction and write the code that polls, hey, did that transaction succeed or fail? What was the results of it? That kind of thing. So those are the high level benefits. And on the drawback side of things, we have a totally separate slide here that goes through the drawbacks or the concerns, I should say, or blockers. Most of these have been resolved. So we've had really lively discussion on the pull request. I have to thank everybody who's been involved in the discussions. This has actually been quite a journey from its original concept. The original concept was very tightly scoped to verifying ownership on the account, and this is a much more generic approach that I think people will find more useful. And the major things that were concerns were that there will be a possibility where there could be a division in support. If a certain wallet does not implement this new part of the standard, then this could penalize a wallet that otherwise would have users logging in to a DApp. If a DApp only allows logging in via this new method, then there will be a split. Which wallet can I log in with to this particular DApp? Well, you can only log in to that DApp with a wallet that supports the new extension to the standard. This is definitely a concern. Our recommendation is that DApps should have a happy fallback where if somebody wants to choose to use a wallet that actually adds a full access key or a limited access key, then that could be an alternative way to sign in. There's no requirement that this is the only way to sign in, but the user, of course, is going to see that extra friction. They're probably going to put pressure on their wallet implementer to go, hey, why don't you support this functionality? And it should motivate those wallets to implement the easier, lower friction way of signing in. The idea that wallets are obliged to implement the standards is also one that we talked about. So in order to be listed in Wallet Selector, there's some requirements around security reviews and implementation of basic APIs that the Wallet Selector has to use. And at some point here, this new functionality, this new API call can be required to implement or to support a wallet in Wallet Selector. That would add an extra API call that is the base standard API that wallets need to implement into their support for Wallet Selector in order to be listed in the list of wallets that you can log into using Wallet Selector. So this can provide a little bit of a nudge towards the wallets to say, if you want to be listed in Wallet Selector, the whole point of Wallet Selector being an easy way of providing a compatibility layer for all of the wallets in the ecosystem to be able to work in a consistent way, then you need to implement this API in addition to the ones that you had implemented in the past. And the second major concern was, well, by removing the sign-in, creating an on-chain key, we're reducing the number of transactions that happen on-chain. So right now, every time somebody signs into a DApp, there's a transaction submitted on-chain that adds an access key to their account to prove that they own that account. And if everybody started using sign message, then there would be less transactions on-chain. And this is true. However, we're not trying to index towards usage of the chain on authentication, as a benefit towards the chain or as a driver for on-chain usage. On-chain usage should be driven by organic usage that's necessary, things that actually make a difference, transactions that are valid, that add some kind of value to the user, that need an interaction with the blockchain. And there was some discussion about this, but the general consensus was that this is a good way to be moving. There is a reduction in transactions, but also it's also worth considering that most DApps or many DApps still will need a limited access key to give you a smooth interaction with their smart contract with background transactions that you pay gas for without having to constantly be interacting with the wallet. This is a different way of authenticating that will likely apply to a subset of apps anyway. If you need to be able to submit transactions with a limited access key, then you'll continue to use the other API and the user will still get a limited access key, and it'll make sense to them why they're getting one because they're using a DApp that uses transactions on chain. So this will simplify the mental model for users as well. Third one was one that I had actually brought up in my final review of the NEP, which is currently signing a transaction has a receiver ID that's used, a receiver of the transaction, the target that the transaction executes against. And receiver is a key on this payload that is being provided to the wallet to be signed as a message. So there's some similarity in terminology, but a difference in logical meaning between these things, because receiver in this NEP is really, it's the requester or the origin of the request. There's not a smart contract online that receives this. There is no transaction. So having the name of a receiver, if somebody is looking through near documentation, they may pull up the signed transaction documentation and right next to it, the signed message documentation. And it could be easy for them to conflate the two or get confused about the difference between the two. Well, how is signed message receiver not like signed transaction receiver? Isn't it an account? Isn't it a transaction? It adds, if you're doing search term searches, indexing via Google or something, or looking for posts on Stack Overflow, you're going to get interleaved data depending on which kind of an API call you're looking at. And my suggestion here was, can we just change the name of receiver? Instead of having receiver, let's call it something that is more specific to this API, which is, my suggestion was requester, or actually, if we want to be even more generic, earlier I was talking about the implementation of WebAuthn or JWT, we could use origin, which is what WebAuthn uses as its challenge. It uses, typically origin is the domain that the request is coming from. And we will probably have a similar kind of a pattern in this usage of this feature, where oftentimes the receiver would have been the domain that it came from if you own a DApp that has its own domain, or it might be a string that somebody comes up with on themselves, my app, my awesome app, whatever that might be. So that was my suggestion, was that we just make a slight tweak to the API so that we don't have this similar but different kind of a argument. And as a result, we separate out the documentation concerns, and the mental model is easier for people to understand. This is signing a message. Somebody requests that you sign the message. That comes from somebody. It's not a target of a transaction that you're signing. That's currently unresolved, and that I didn't see some feedback on the final review. For me, this is not a blocker. This is not something that I would vote against the NEP if we don't change it, but it feels like a really low friction change, something that's trivial for us to modify since nobody has implemented the spec. And I think it would be helpful just from a conceptual standpoint for those who are understanding how this works. The other one was brought up, I believe, actually by Osman, and that is the NEP should emphasize that nonce and receiver should be displayed to the user in signing requests by wallets. So if a wallet receives an API call for this sign message API on the screen that the wallet displays, we want the wallets to be encouraged strongly to show the user relevant information that lets them understand what they're signing and why they're signing it. And by including the nonce and the receiver both in that information, we show the user context that they can use to understand, do I want to sign this message? Is this a safe message to sign? And who is the person who's requesting this message? Nonce is very important from a security standpoint to avoid replay attacks. You want the nonce to be unique each time there's a signing request. And it is possible that somebody could implement a DApp that uses this API in an insecure manner. They could use nonces that are not unique. And if they did that, then we could run into a situation where security of this functionality is compromised. You don't want to be signing multiple requests with the same nonce. This is a bad idea cryptographically. You want nonces to be unique. The whole point of nonce is number only used once. You want that to be one and only one usage. If you have people signing messages that have the same nonce over and over, things get really freaky from a security standpoint. You can end up compromising your actual full access key, the underlying key that you're using to sign them. So it could be helpful to show nonces just so that the user could say, I've already signed a message with this nonce. I don't want to sign another message with this nonce. It would be up to the user to keep track of these things, which this is the kind of discussion about, like, well, is this noise to the user? Is this helpful to the user? The user would have to be paying attention to this, and they would have to know that they've signed things repeatedly with the same nonce. However, that was the reason for this concern, was it can compromise the security of the signing if you sign a bunch of messages with the same nonce over and over. And the last thing was not really a concern or a blocker, actually. It's the fact that we should extend our injected wallet API to document this new method, right? The injected wallet API is what most people are using in the wallet ecosystem currently to implement extensions. And in fact, some people have used the injected wallet API with like a bridge to implement against wallets that are web wallets. So we should update the injected wallet API once this has been approved to describe how the signed message should be implemented in injected wallets. And that's true. we absolutely should, but it's also out of scope for the approval of the underlying NEP that we're talking about, which is this API. So should sign message exist as a defined interface that people can implement? So that was resolved. Cool. So at a high level, I think the main things would be at this point discussion around voting. I've noticed there's been some mentions in the chat from folks that are saying.
Let me just bring to attention the comments from the chat. So for the sake of future listeners, that we are on the same page. So Guillermo commented that the following: I do agree with changing the receiver for another name, but I do not like the requester or region, since they talk from the perspective of the person receiving the message. I would instead propose recipient. I'm sending it to someone which is perpendicular to somebody asked it to me, it from me. What do you guys think? Is there do you think it's worth to discuss this, like naming during the call, or maybe we take it offline? What do you think, Daryl, Osman, Cameron?
So personally, I don't have a strong opinion around the exact wording. My main goal is to not have the exact same wording as the signed transaction. I'm totally fine with recipient as an idea instead. Origin was mainly as a benefit in my mind in that it overlaps with WebAuthn. So since this pattern is basically the same as a WebAuthn authentication, it seemed like it might help people kind of build a mental model of how this works in a familiar way if they've implemented WebAuthn before. But I don't have I think recipient could work just fine on my side. I don't have an objection there.
I think like receiver and requester sort of pretend or hint that it's a near account ID, where like I don't think it's necessarily a near account ID in this case, right? So like I like origin a bit more, and I think receiver also implies that like we're sending a transaction as well, like Daryl pointed out. So those would be the things I'd be thinking about when come up with the naming here, like that this doesn't need to be a near account ID. It could be like a website, it could be anything. And then the second thing is like we're not sending a transaction here, right? So like you wouldn't conflate that with the other send transaction methods. Sorry about the background.
I'm completely out of scope here, but maybe referral is something that we can reuse from the web to world. Is that the term we are looking for?
I think refer might confuse people as well, because usually refer is a domain. People think about that on the request side of things on the browser APIs, and in this case, it's going to be an arbitrary string. We're not requiring that it is a domain. It could be name of my D app actually. That's one of the reasons why I'm kind of hesitant to use origin as well, because origin in WebAuthn really is the domain that things are coming from. It's almost I think it's actually even articulated in some of the specs that it should be the domain, and that's not always going to be the case for DApps. If you have multiple DApps in the same domain, then they should actually have different origins or different requesters. So this is a kind of a tricky thing. I don't have a strong opinion about where we go other than I think we shouldn't have it be the same thing as signed transaction.
Okay, well, do we want to continue discussing this point, or maybe tabling it to the end? Do we think this is like blocking us from moving forward with a decision, or at this point?
It's not a blocker for me.
Yeah, not a blocker for me. I do like what Guillermo is saying about the word recipient. It does, I think, help clarify a lot of things, but I don't think this is. I think this could be formalized off this call, and shouldn't necessarily be blocking the decision. Okay.
Maybe Guillermo, if you're up for it, maybe we can come back to it just to make sure we get through the rest of the call. But like, I'd love to. Yeah, if we have time, we can maybe have a 5-minute sidebar at the end, or we can continue it. Yeah, on the NEP itself. That's a great idea as well. So
yeah. I feel like we could do just a final vote on the NEP itself for the people who've been contributing, and get a ABC. Here are 3 options, and see which one wins.
Great. Okay. Awesome. And then was there another comment, Vlad, that you wanted that you thought was relevant? I saw Paul. I think I saw one. I'm scrolling back.
I think it was Paul who commented the following. I think nonce will not be easy comprehensible from the general user perspective, as it's just a bunch of random bytes, kind of hard to keep track of the human reading an interface. And I tend to agree. And I think, well, Daryl, what you just brought here is that like we assume humans, like users, would need to be in charge of checking that they are not signing the same nonce again. We probably can have a cached list of used nonces with expiration in local storage, and that would be it.
So David actually brought a good point on the PR when we were talking about this, and the purpose of the nonce is actually for the caller, so that the caller, so that the wallet or the user doesn't actually resend a signed message that the caller requested earlier. So I think that was the main idea behind it, but this is a secondary idea as well, where the user doesn't sign multiple of the same nonces. So, but the main purpose of the nonce is actually so that the caller doesn't receive an already signed message that's signed with a different nonce or delayed, or like, let's say the caller asks for a signature and then the user like keeps that signed message and then resends it. If there was no nonce, then like the caller wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two signed messages. So that was the replay attack that the NEP author had in mind, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So there's two different concerns. One is replay attacks, and then the other one is the security of signing many things with the exact same nonce and the same key being a security concern. I actually really like that idea, Vlad, that the wallet itself could be encouraged to keep track of nonces that are signed with a particular key, because the wallet knows the key that's being used to sign the transaction, or sorry, the message in this case, and the wallet could actually balk at signing the same multiple messages with the same nonce. I actually would be a big fan of just adding that as some wording to the NEP that says we encourage. The question then becomes, is it a requirement for implementation, or is it a strongly encourage that it be implemented for the wallet? Yeah, I think it would have to be strongly encouraged at least.
It's like it would have to keep track of the same nonces per receiver, right? So it's like if it gets the same nonce for this particular requester, then it rejects. But then if it gets the same nonce but for another requester, then it's fine.
Yep, I think we should add that to the wording. I think that would be awesome. The wallet should reject multiple messages for the same recipient that have the same nonce. How much they're able to persist. I mean, this is obviously a scalability thing. Can you keep a log of absolutely every single one? And there's concerns around, well, what if you're on two different machines? But best effort on the wallet side. All of those are implementation details.
Perfect. Matt, who is going to take that action? Is it going to be Philip as the author? You're going to go and incorporate that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome. Thank you. And then, yeah, just we definitely will post this call as well, but I guess, whoever has spoken today, I think Paul, Guillermo, feel free to also add your comments on the NEP. Just again, we want to create visibility. We know that there are a lot of time zones, so not everyone can attend the call. So we just want to make it really fair and transparent. So, but really appreciate all of the input and the summary, Daryl, that you gave on the concerns. And I think now that we've heard all of those, I'd love to now hand it over to each working group member to present their opinion, how you're leaning, which brings us to the voting stage of the call. So who would like to go first?
I can go. Make it
Awesome.
pretty quick. So yeah, TLDR, I support this as a user of a lot of newer apps. I'm always looking for better ways to streamline the experience. I also think that this is going to be, really helpful for a lot of dApp developers to help with connecting with, I guess, streamlining the experience with other wallets, removing the delay for users, progressive onboarding. We talk a lot about in our wallet builder groups, make signing easier. Overall, like, this is almost a no-brainer for me. So it's a yes for me. And yeah, I don't know if you have any other questions about my thoughts. Feel free to just at me in the GitHub repo. Yeah, I could pass it on to Awesome.
Okay, so yeah, for me, I vote yes as well. I think it's like, this is a different function from like access key addition, and the fact that access key addition is being used for this, like, is because we don't have standards for it yet. So this is the right way to approach it, and it's a completely different functionality, and it's, I think, been widely requested, and so yeah, definitely yes for me.
Good stuff. Well, I'm also inclined to vote yes for this. I think it's a huge improvement as far as capabilities for dApps that don't require limited access keys, and I think it'll eliminate some dark patterns on the intro.
All right, awesome. So I am hearing a unanimous consensus, it seems like, and with that, it seems like this NEP is officially approved by the working group members. Yes, and I just saw Shock's message. Is this another pass, another NEP? 3 in less than a week. Yes, I can't believe it either. When I first joined several months ago, there were some NEPs that were just kind of hanging out for several months, and it took a lot of time and effort to even just get one pass. So this is definitely, representative of every single action that everyone on this call, including the attendees, have taken just to kind of help align. So thank you, super exciting, and thank you, Philip, again. But before we go to thank yous and next steps, actually, let's talk about next steps. So Daryl or Vlad, can one of you speak to this, or anyone else?
Absolutely. So all of the wallets are going to need to implement against this API, and this actually dovetails very well with our earlier concern of the injected wallet standard should have this added to it so that people know what to actually implement against. So as soon as this has been approved and merged, we're going to want to have a follow-up that adds this to the injected wallet standard. I don't think that needs to go through a major review process because it's an implementation of this NEP, which we've already reviewed and approved. So that can be, I'm happy to follow up on the injected wallet and just get that PR created that actually has a proof of concept of this so people know what to implement. And once that's been merged, then it needs to be broadcasted to wallet teams. So all of the people that are in the wallet builders groups in Telegram, that would be the obvious audience for this. People who are building wallets need to be made aware that we have updated the injected wallet standard and that they should implement this stuff into the injected wallet standard that they've conformed with on their existing wallet implementations. That's something that maybe I'm not sure who would be the best person to socialize that there. Maybe Cameron.
Yep. We actually have a call in 15 minutes with a bunch of wallet builders, so we can get that moving ASAP.
Good stuff.
Awesome.
So once we've told them about that, then the wallet teams themselves are going to go through and just add support for the sign message, which will be a little UI that responds to this new API call that shows the user that they're signing a message. It can explain to the user that they're not executing an on-chain transaction, maybe give them a little bit of information about why they're signing a message. It's verifying that they own the account, and they will implement that and release it into production. And as they do that, they will then update their corresponding wallet implementation in the wallet selector package. So wallet selector is the central place where everybody implements or ties their wallet implementations to the actual client that the app developers use. So once the wallet team has updated their wallet to support this API, they will open a pull request against the wallet selector repository that updates that adds to their plugin or their module the support for this this method, the sign message method.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and one new thing that we've been adding to NEPs is also, yeah, summarizing the benefits and concerns section in the NEP itself. So Philip, I can reach out to you to see if you want to partner on that, and I can share with you an example from another NEP. But yeah, are there any other comments just on next steps? Okay, cool. So I just wanted to open it up to Q&A. Does anyone have any questions or feedback just on the overall process and the call? Definitely would love to hear.
While we're waiting for other comments, I just want to communicate back the chat messages there. So there was a background conversation continuing on the receiver naming. And my proposal was that we could have actually two terms, one for devs, which we would call a region, and another for regular users on the wallet interface. And we can easily also communicate it with within the NEP, and that would probably solve our problem right now. But that's just the proposal. I think we'll have it over the GitHub discussion anyway, so feel free to chip in.
Awesome. So we did get just a comment from Guillermo. So happy to see this NEP moving forward. Near Wallet is about to get even more awesome. And yeah, that's super, super great. So cool. With that, I'd love to just quickly talk about ways that all of you, anyone on this call can get involved further. So if you have an idea that you want to get integrated, or sorry, if you just have a general idea that you want to collaborate with others around, you can use the dev gigs board as I discussed to post that there. You can also add solution, implementation, proposals, etc. If you have an idea that you want to get integrated across the ecosystem, that's where you also need to submit a NEP, or also if you want to seek funding. And then if you want to see all of the existing NEPs discussions that are going on, you can check out the Kanban board on GitHub that shows all of the NEPs by each working group. So you can filter it down to the wallet standards group and see all those NEPs. And then, of course, there are community groups. So there's the Near Wallet Builder group that actually Cameron and Shot have been leading, and it's been just getting a lot of activity and momentum. I don't know if Cameron or Shot, you want to say anything, give a plug?
Absolutely. So if you just go to nearhacks.com/builders, you can check out all of the builder groups that the Banyan team helps run. Well, actually, there's many of them on that list that we don't tangibly run, but the whole point here is if you're a founder or builder focused on a certain vertical and you want to connect with other builders interested in that same vertical, there is a weekly call for you to join. There is an online community for you to collaborate with. And we unpack a lot of future standards here and get the feedback from the community on what they think about the standards before you would start drafting this as an NEP. So yeah, join. It's totally accessible to all builders. Now, we did want to rename it Wallet Builder Group after we named it originally Wallet Community Group, because we just had a bunch of people join that just say, hey, I'm part of the community. These groups, to be clear, are for builders. And so if you're interested in building wallets and collaborating with other wallet builders, join that one. We also run NFT one, DAO, DeFi, and that's pretty much it. And so there's a bunch of other ones that you can join. So next call is 10 minutes from now. So we're Shot, by the way, huge shout out to Shot for putting all this, a lot of this together. Wallet builders, nearbuilders.com too is a good place to go. So thank you, Ori, for giving me the time there.
Amazing. Yeah, no, this is great. Cool. Well, so just if you want to learn more about developer governance, please bookmark our website, follow us on Twitter, Telegram, and yeah, also there's a reminder. I wanted to give a reminder for the first tools working group, which is happening this Thursday. We're actually going to be doing it in a slightly different time zone that's more accessible to our community in Asia and parts of Europe. So if you happen to be available during that time, would love to see you there. And with that, I would like to close by giving a humongous shout out to Philip for taking the time to write this NEP and bring it forward. Yes, Daryl is doing the heart emoji with the hands, which we're very grateful for that. And then the working group members, Cameron, Daryl, Osman, you took the time to also think through the snap and add your perspective, which we appreciate. The subject matter experts, Peter, Paul, who spent a great amount of effort as well, thinking through the benefits and the concerns, which helped Daryl and the working group members also think further through the snap. And then the community that was involved, Cameron already gave a shout out to Sean, and I wanted to echo that as well. He's been very active, especially in like the wallet community groups and beyond. So super grateful. And yeah, with that, I want to wish everybody a good week and give you some time back in case you want to prepare for that next call. So thank you again and take care.
I think we, from the comments, we also want to give shout outs to Guillermo, who worked a lot and contributed to the snap. So yeah, thanks for the community to also recognize each other, and definitely it's worth to get everybody to the same page. And thanks to all this effort, we can move forward. So kudos to everybody. Thanks.
Yes. Cheers. Take care.